Chantel, Sam, Emma, what stakes do you have when Democrats fail miserably in their policy making? Your show will continue to do well. You will have money to sustain. Many of your listeners, like me, have a lot at stake. Don't you think that defines the way people demand for an alternative to Dems and get disheartened, unlike you, who has absolutely nothing at stake, actually? Well,
I mean, we live in this country, and also I would say that it's not like we're getting paid the big bucks to do this. We're in this because we care, I think, more than the average person.
I don't understand. Like, I mean, if you think that that's the only issue, then there's very little that I could actually discuss.
Yeah.
I think it's doing you a bigger disservice to treat like the People's Party or the Green Party without skepticism. I think it's leading people up a worse dead end than saying this is actually a long process that is going to take, exerting force on a whole bunch of different ends. And like, I don't really get that we're not disenchanted with the Democratic Party, just saying that nothing else has come to us say like, oh, there's the new vehicle, definitely. Like, and I don't know, it's just childish besides that.
I would also say that if you are relying on only the uninsured people in this country to bring about Medicare for all, you will be SOL. Bottom line. That will not happen.
Or anything without allies. I mean, it's not even, it's any movement. You need allies. You need people who've been affected in the past, but are in better situations. It's just not a very,
Shocked as to the assertion that we do not feel the ramifications of policy in the United States as people that live in the United States.
You live in New York. It's like impossible to survive here. I don't know. And also on top of it all, it's not like your business model is set on Democrats sucking, because like newsflash, numbers are down across the board for anybody without Trump in office.
Right. Then we would not be this. In fact, fact giving a nuanced perspective on the Democrats' failures is actually less lucrative in this online space.
And yeah, I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. I know plenty of people who also, frankly, do this for a living that don't have health insurance, and they have same positions that I do.
Just because you see us
on, think your fever dream is any more, useful.
Just because you see us on the internet does not mean like we're sitting on a pot of gold here.
Well, but even that's largely irrelevant. I mean, I was against the Iraq War, and I can tell you that it did not impact my life one iota. And sadly, I think for the overwhelming number of Americans, it did not impact their life one iota, not one iota, unless you had a family member in the military, or unless you had relatives in Iraq. That was the whole story of that entire war. It doesn't impact my life one way or another, whether we abandon Afghanistan as we've done. It doesn't impact my life largely as to whether we show no humanity to immigrants. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
At least immediately.
If you are looking for, you think that the only people who can advocate or analyze or criticize Democrats in their failures are people who are directly impacted by them, then I think you're going to find that there's just not going to be enough people associated to make any change.
And historically, that's not the case, right? There's, for every Cesar Chavez, there's an FDR, and I understand it's complicated. There's a Karl Marx who's being subsidized by his best friend's, father's factory. I mean, there are many people and points in history where people in privilege, or on, the beginning of having some form of privilege, have fought for, everybody below them and on the ground. That's just how movements work. You have allies showing up, the March on Washington, that were not Black Americans, but were union members. It's just not realistic.
This person needs content for their message that is just moral blackmail, because they can't say that the Green Party or the People's Party, the things that I've supported, are actually going to accomplish stuff either. So you just revert to this sort of.
Well, I would also love to see the same questioning of those parties as they throw at the Democratic Party. You know, I always ask who's funding the Democratic Party. I'm also curious who's funding the Green Party and who's funding the People's Party, because they're not very transparent about that either. There's no membership. At least the DNC has elections. They're broken, but at least they have elections. So show me. I'd love to know how your party is better.
The real
not seeing it.
The real alternative to this, in my sense, is like independent socialists like Robin Warloba in Minneapolis. And guess what? Those people don't run their campaigns mainly just shitting on Democrats. They run in primaries, but they say, like, we don't care about the Democratic endorsement. We just want this position of power. But they understand that voters, especially the ones that they're going to try to turn out on election day, aren't going to want that just let's flame Democrats for 90% of the time as part of your campaign. That's just not, it's not realistic. Way to get
the truth is, Bernie's movement, you just captured it, Matt. This is the hard truth about Bernie's movement. He had so many the majority of his movement, people who voted for him, were Democrats. You think that unions are going to leave the Democratic Party anytime soon? Well, guess what? You just cut out a big chunk of this progressive movement. It's unions are flawed. They need to be strengthened, but I'm going to guess they're not going to sign up for the Green Party anytime soon, because they have to negotiate with Democratic legislatures and Democratic governors on getting funding. And I mean, that's what happens in New York. So there's a reality to how these movements and these parties are built. And Bernie Sanders, as much as he was an independent, he caucused with Democrats and he worked with the Democratic Party to run for the Democratic presidential nomination.